So I've said enough for now. I'd love to hear a few voices. I don't know that we'll be able to hear from everyone, but if you want to just come off mute for a moment and just share, what were you hoping to take away from today?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, apologies, my background is very loud, but I will try and ensure that I'm very audible. My name is Eva Magembe. I'm in Uganda. I'm into retail. I run a stock market called Dubai Stock Market in Uganda. And what I hope to take away from this workshop is basically how to have my business more visible, especially when it comes to the online platforms, and basically to help me leverage, especially in terms of financial growth um, from the marketing side of things. Because currently I do zero marketing, and yet I would love to grow my business. So generally what I'm trying to center on this year is to see how we can have visibility online. So one of the take homes basically would be how to leverage in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you for sharing. Who else? Who wants to share quickly? Just what were you hoping to get out of today?
Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua. I'm based in Nairobi, an IT company. And we offer IT services for corporate clients. So for me, if there could be a small mention about how to target corporate clients as opposed to individual users of the service, I would appreciate to just get to know a little bit about that. And currently, I do not have any marketing form or strategy, so I'm just curious to learn and see how that can be applicable, but emphasis on corporate clients.
Great. Thanks, Joshua. Yeah, and we're going to talk a lot about priority audiences. Who are you targeting? And because there are so many types of businesses here, we won't be able to get into any one of them too deeply, but you will see that that's a key question we need to answer when we're filling out our marketing strategy. So thanks for that. How about one more? How about one more person can share and then we'll move on?
Yeah, my name is Anthony. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm mainly B2B, business to business. So sometimes I get mixed up on really how to channel my messages. You know, most people channel messages like targeting each and everyone, but I'm kind of targeting maybe particular businesses. So it would be good to, you know, get a clear line on, you know, how to channel the messages to B2B. Basically, I'm an industrial equipment supplier, mainly hospitality, and also other industrial equipment to institutions and other entities that need them. So it would be good to learn about how to target the B2B, unlike mass, like for every individual. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Anthony. And if you didn't have a chance to share yet, please keep it in mind. We're going to be sharing out through the course of the workshop, so everyone can feel free to chime in. Again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because this is the upfront information and I want you to be able to get into your business as quickly as possible. So real fast, what is brand strategy and why is this part of this marketing communication topic? We believe that a brand is the art of it's aligning what you want people to think about your company with what they actually think. And so you're putting something out in the world, a message or a brand or communications, and then someone is intercepting that. And that interception point, that point is really, that's a brand. So part of it's within your control and part of it is really out of your control. A brand strategy is really a process, though. It's a strategic process, and it does lead to things like logos and copywriting and websites, but that's really branding. What we're talking about here is brand strategy, which it does influence those things, but this is much more than just style or personality. This is more about strategic decisions you'll be making. And we always say it's a process, not an event. You can't attend 1 2-hour workshop and figure out your brand or communications. You really can't even figure it out in a week or two. It's an ongoing event. Some brands grow old and you know, prosper like people. Some are timeless. So brands definitely take years of cultivation. So I'm hoping if you've not touched on this work yet, this will be a starting point, but not the finish line yet. And why does brand matter? Why does communications matter? Well, the research shows and our experience shows that it leads to operating with higher performance, yielding greater margins in your business, greater investments and grants, longer term interactions with your customers and audiences, loyalty, referrals, repeat business, attracting the team and volunteers. That's something that we often don't think about with marketing, but this internal piece of how do we attract the best employees and volunteers and keep them retained. Strategic partnerships, other organizations out there that could work with you. This is why brand matters. It's not just about looking good and feeling good. It's about really driving bottom line business performance and results. So we like to think of a brand in 4 parts. It's called our 4 A's process. We're only going to touch on the marketing side today, but I'm showing you this so you can start to think about how this is much bigger than just a messaging problem or a communications problem. Organizations typically come to us and they say, we need better marketing, but what we find is they need to oftentimes take 2 steps back. So the first piece of our framework is called your ambition. That's who are you at the core and where do you want to go? What's your mission? What's your vision? What's the need around your work? What are the results you're trying to achieve? Who are the people in your model? All these different questions around mission and reason for doing the work and where is this going? That's the core of your ambition, your brand ambition. The second piece of our 4 A's framework is your approach. You might hear people referring to this as your positioning strategy. This is really thinking about, okay, who else is out there? What competitors exist? Who am I targeting in my brand? What audiences? What makes me special and unique? What are my brand promises to them? This is a lot of that upfront planning and strategy. Then you can get into amplifying your brand. This is why most people are here. This is what really does matter, but this is the marketing and communications piece that's really impossible without some of that upfront planning. So amplification includes things like the visuals of your brand, the messaging of your brand, the channels you use, the partnerships, all the ways that you get your brand out to the world. And then finally, there's a 4th piece. The 4th A is this internal alignment. It's not good enough to just tell the world about your brand. You really need to make sure you're aligning it internally as well. And that's a whole discipline that I'm going to skip over for today, but it is an important part of brand building. If you ask me in layman's terms, what do these 4 A's mean? 1 could be your impact model or your business model. That could be your ambition. Your approach is your positioning strategy. Again, amplification is marketing and communications. That's the topic for today. And you could think of that 4th A as what's called organization design, but we're just focused on marketing and communication today. So it's really, how do we amplify your brand to the world? What is your messaging? What are the stories we're telling? And then the channels we're using. We'll try to get through all 3 of these at the highest level and then give you a lot to think about and homework to be working on. We'll leave you with a tool to be working on as well. That way that over the coming weeks, you can hopefully make big improvements here. So just to take a step back, marketing strategy really fits in the middle of 2 things. So we're not yet talking about Facebook and Twitter and events and radio and the implementation side of marketing. That's more down the line once you figure out the strategy. We're also not talking about your biggest picture revenue streams and customer sources and products and programs and finances. That's more business strategy. So marketing strategy really fits in between those 2 things. So these are the major steps that you need to consider. And of course, with Sinapis or other programs or reading you might have done, everyone has probably seen something like a business model canvas. You've figured out the business model. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're going to be going through is this 10-step marketing strategy plan. And so this is a template we're going to make available to you after the call, but we're going to be working on it together today. And it's really 10 key steps. I think for a lot of people, they might not have even really seen a marketing plan before. They've done some things, they're on Twitter here, or they go to events there, they have a pitch deck, but maybe they haven't put it into a comprehensive plan like this. And so this plan, this template, this 10-step process, I think will really simplify marketing because it feels like an overwhelming concept, but it's actually not. It's a little bit science and a little bit art, but if you simplify it and just think of these 10 steps, it'll help maybe strip away some of the mystery and the complexity, and we can just think about these 10 steps, and this will be your marketing plan going forward. So we're going to work on each of these 10 steps today. That is going to be the whole purpose of this program. And as you saw in there, messaging and channels were a key part of that marketing plan. So that was quick, but we're going to dive right into the workshop. All right, you ready to start forming your marketing strategy? If you remember at the very top of that piece of the puzzle, the very top of that template, the whole thing starts with goals. This isn't business goals, this is marketing goals. So your business goals might be to grow to a certain size, or to leave a legacy for your family, or influence your community, whatever that business goal is. This is really about how marketing can support those business goals. So what we're going to do from this point forward is I'm going to introduce each section, and then we're going to hit a gold slide where you're going to stop and spend about 3 minutes sketching it out. So if you don't have a piece of paper in front of you, or if you're on your phone or tablet or computer, just feel free to take some notes. I didn't want everyone trying to fill out a template while we talked. So for today, just fill out some notes. It can be rough. It doesn't have to be perfect. Once you fill out the notes, we're going to stop and share a little bit with each other. And then at the end of the call, you'll get the template that you can actually fill out. So the first question is, what are your marketing goals? How can marketing help lead to success for your organization? What are you trying to achieve with your marketing in the next 12 months? I think a few of you gave some examples. Yeah, and how can marketing help you reach those goals? Let me give you a few examples of what a marketing goal or two could look like. You could say, hey, marketing, I want it to help me drive more sales. It could be all about brand awareness. You could be trying to expand into new markets or maybe new territories. You could be trying to develop stronger stakeholder relationships. Maybe that's your community. Maybe that's partners. Who knows? Maybe you're trying to recruit employees. Again, as many organizations grow, if you go from 10 to 100 people into 1,000, it's harder and harder to recruit employees and make them care about you. With so many available people on the market, that sometimes you're really having to figure out, where do I reach them? And so marketing is a tool for that. Reaching new audiences or demographics, securing funding. These are all examples. Feel free to take from here, copy with pride, so to speak. Feel free to take some of these or develop some of your own. Attracting government partners, that could be a key marketing goal for you. These are all goals that marketing can help you accomplish. So each time we see a gold slide, this is going to be your chance to start sketching things out. And I'll look at my clock and spend about 3 minutes. I'll stop talking for 3 minutes so that you can sketch a few things out. And then I'd like to get 1 or 2 people to share for each of these sections. So let's sketch it out. Describe your goals in 1 sentence. Don't write a paragraph. You could maybe choose up to 3 maximum that last for a whole year. But if you have more than 3 goals, it's just going to be too hard to build a plan around it. Or no more than 1 for each quarter. So you could say, hey, it's April, it's the beginning of Q2. For Q2, this is my marketing goal. Remember, these are big long-term aims. These are not the nitty-gritty exact numbers. These are not yet targets. These are not yet objectives. We are going to touch on those later, but this is the big picture stuff, like drive more sales or attract government partners. So I'll stop for 3 minutes. Would love for you to sketch some ideas, and then we'll have 1 or 2 people share. And by the way, I forgot to mention, feel free to use the Zoom chat if anyone has any questions, or yeah, it looks like Juliet just said the same thing. Thank you, Juliet. Yeah, feel free. The Sinapis team will be monitoring the chat. So if something didn't make sense, if you need me to re-explain it, let me know. Save the big picture conversations for the end on the Q&A, but for now, just chime in if anything doesn't make sense or we need to spend more time on it. We'll spend about 2 more minutes trying to sketch out a few marketing goals. All right, if anyone wants to come off mute and share, it'd be a great chance to provide some feedback. So what are your goals? Marketing goals.
My name is Gladys Omaida. I run strategic conflict management. It's a business that handles alternative dispute resolution, which is arbitration, mediation, and we do a lot of trainings and also do some legal work. Uh, ADR is not something that is new in the market, especially mediation, and very few people are unaware of how mediation operates and the benefits of mediation and all that. So my marketing strategy would be is to grow brand awareness, as in strategic conflict management is here. It's ready to provide mediation services, ADR services. We also want to drive more sales, because considering that most people will always opt for litigation as opposed to mediation and arbitration. So you'll find that the sales are really, really minimal. So with the marketing strategy, we would want to drive more sales and also expand our market share in the new market, because this is a new thing that's in the market. We want to raise awareness and expand the share, in the sense that most people will opt for mediation as opposed to going to court.
Sure. Thanks, Gladys. No, that's a great example. I love this example because you're not just selling yogurt, or you're not a used car lot trying to sell something that people already know that they want and need. You're trying to create awareness first, and then you're trying to reassure them that you're the right partner. And so I think that's a great example of a marketing goal, is both creating awareness and awareness of your brand and driving sales of your brand. And so you almost have a few goals all tied up into one. So I think that's a really great one. In the interest of time, I'm going to move on just so that we can get to the Q&A section after that one example. But again, please hold your questions, type them in. Once we get to the Q&A section, we can dig in much deeper. But that's a great first example. Thank you, Gladys. So if we sketch down our goals, then now we know the next step in that 10-step process that I showed you are your messages. So this section is actually a little bit more complicated, because there are so many different messages you could be telling. You might have one goal, like Gladys said, she has the goal of really awareness of ADR and then also creating sales. But there are so many different messages to tell, right? And I think that's why, as this slide says, so many organizations struggle with messaging clarity. Their teams and their different touch points, they maybe don't tell the same story. Maybe they're not speaking in the same voice. It doesn't have the same consistency across platforms. Maybe if you go to Twitter or your website, it says one thing, but if you have a one-pager or a sales deck, it says another. Maybe there's outdated or inaccurate language, right? So many of us are so concentrated on the products and programs, we sometimes forget to make updates. And so messaging can be hard, but I think you have to stop and ask yourself this question: what is your message? Can you say it easily? Is it repeatable and relevant? Can your entire team say the same message in such a way that it's compelling? Unfortunately, many of us struggle with that. And I say us because even at Mighty Ally, we do this for a living, but sometimes we have to strip down the complexity and make sure that we're all on the same page of exactly what our core message is. So again, to ensure that your whole team can repeat the message in a clear and compelling way, it must be consistent. So your team, they don't need to be robots. They don't need to say the exact same words every single time, but it needs to be consistent, unified across the team and resonant. It needs to matter, right? It needs to resonate with your brand. There's a tool we use for messaging, and we don't have time to get into it today, but I wanted to plant this seed so that you could be thinking about it. There is a tool called a messaging platform, and it's a guide. It's not something you publish to the world. It's something you create internally that gives you a guide for public-facing language. And so it has, it's written in your tone of voice, and it incorporates your brand personality. It really is just a great bank of information. I'm going to show you that there are a lot of elements in a messaging platform. It should describe your vision and your mission. It should get into things like your unique selling propositions, your product and service descriptions, impact metrics, or just core data around your organization. It could even have a bank of words and phrases to use and those to avoid. There's so much that could go into this. But the one thing we're going to pick out from it today is this bottom right where it says elevator pitch. We're going to pick that out and work on that together today because it's such a critical element of your messaging. Everyone's probably heard of an elevator pitch. It's that short, high-level overview of your entire organization. But it's also a starting point for much deeper conversations and communications. And we like to pick this piece out because even though it's normally used in speaking situations, once you really nail your elevator pitch, once you really get this down, it's a great way to guide other marketing materials. Just like if you had short space in like an event description, if you went to an event and you only had 2 or 3 sentences to include in your bio or on LinkedIn or a social post or maybe a printed poster, if you really get your elevator pitch down, it starts to guide all of those future communications. So that's why today we're just going to be looking at an elevator pitch versus all the other messaging elements. I wanted to share an example of an elevator pitch. You might recognize it based on the things I've told you about us. The way we introduce ourselves, it's here on screen, and I don't need to read it word for word, but what you'll see here is we don't start by talking about us. We start by talking about the problem we're trying to solve in the outside world. People might not want to hear about you yet. They want to hear, what is this all about? Then you can see it says, we guide nonprofits and social enterprises, and it says very clearly exactly what we do. And then third, you'll see, what is it all about? What's the payoff? What's the vision? This is a 3-part elevator pitch that we find to be really successful. And again, this is not just for you to say if you're in an elevator with an investor or a partner, but this is for you to start to think about, how does this 3-part elevator pitch guide all of your future communications? We sometimes see organizations where we say, well, tell us about what you do. And the first thing the founder says is, oh, wow, it's complicated. Where do I start? Well, we used to do this and now we do that. And it just, you get lost. And or another organization might say, well, it started with my grandfather 100 years ago, and we've been operating in rural Kenya, and you just don't even really know what they're doing. And so this 3-part process just allows you to nail it very quickly and concisely. So we're going to stop here, have you work on this. We're not going to be able to get through it today. It's just going to be a few minutes, but I'd love for you to start sketching this out. 3 parts to your elevator pitch, and you should be able to say this in 60 seconds or less. This is that old saying of, if you're on an elevator and you're going up to the maybe 10th floor or maybe 20th floor, you should be able to say it that quickly while you're speaking to someone. So think about those 3 elements. Number 1, you should first state the need or the problem you're trying to solve. It could have a stat, it could have a story, but just very quickly say the need or the problem. The first step is not about you, it's about the outside world. Second step, say very specifically what your solution is or your mission statement. And then the third step is say something about the future, the payoff, maybe your vision statement. This is why all that upfront work and the modeling and positioning and the strategy matters, because if you haven't figured this out yet, how are you going to have clear messaging? That's why we always do 2 steps back before we get into messaging and marketing, but hopefully you have some of these elements in place. So I'm going to set my clock for 3 minutes. Let's just start sketching this out, and then I'd love to get a brave volunteer to try to share their elevator pitch. All right, I'm sure you've got plenty more. You could keep working on this, but I'd love to have, let's get one volunteer to share your elevator pitch, and then I'll give some feedback. So if I were an investor or a partner or a potential customer, and I walked up to you and said, tell me about your organization, what would that 60-second pitch be?
May I try?
Sure, please.
Okay. So we believe everyone is entitled to an even playing field and every dispute can be resolved. Strategic conflict management. Sorry about that. Okay, let me start again. We believe everyone is entitled to an even playing field and every dispute can be resolved. Strategic conflict management provides a strategic platform for resolving conflict that is managed efficiently, professionally, and is cost-effective for entrepreneurs who are entering into contracts or agreements that are binding in nature or are suffering as a result of frustrations of contracts, or to persons in conflict due to inheritance, land, employment, and family disputes. The payoff is restoration of relationships.
Thanks, Gladys. I've got a couple of thoughts of input, but if anyone would like to jump in the spirit of peer learning and peer evaluations, does anyone have any feedback? How did it sound to you? Feel free to just jump in. We're all friends here.
Would you please say it again, please?
You want me to repeat?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me repeat it. Okay. We believe everyone is entitled to an even playing field and every dispute can be resolved. Strategic conflict management provides a strategic platform for resolving conflict that is managed efficiently, professionally, and is cost-effective for entrepreneurs who are entering into contracts or agreements that are binding in nature or are suffering as a result of frustrations of contracts, or to persons in conflict due to inheritance, land, employment, and family disputes. We grow aggressively to capture fleeting opportunities as all relationships are important. So the payoff is restoration of relationships.
Thanks, Gladys. Ava, did you have any feedback?
Yes, I do. Yeah, indeed, it's a good pitch. I think it captures the three areas, especially the first part of the problem is really captivating. So the moment I hear about me being able, being given a chance to legal advice, it captures my attention. Maybe what I could comment, I think it's a little bit long, so a person wouldn't read it up to the end. And then I think also the language would be good to be simplified, because most of us legal is a new area. So it would be good to use a language that is easy to, like simple words that are easy to be understood by a lay person. But otherwise, I've liked it, like it captures the three dimensions that they've mentioned about, especially that part of the problem, which captures my attention as a potential customer. And
Thank you,
that's
Ava.
it from my side.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, great feedback. I was going to give some similar feedback. I thought it was really great, Gladys. It felt like you knew your stuff, you were passionate about it. I really liked the introduction because here it says the need or the problem you're solving, but I like that you even tied it into your beliefs, your core beliefs, and that's okay too. You could start your elevator pitch with, we believe that all children deserve an education, right? You know, it could be a belief, and that was great. I think like Ava said, maybe the second section where you started to explain what you do, it got a little long there. And so I maybe would think about cutting off one of the sentences. I started to get a little bit lost, but I got the point. And then the payoff or the vision, you could figure out a way to word that. So instead of saying the payoff is, you could say something like, we envision a world where, or something like that, that really makes the point come home. But yeah, you really had the three elements there well, and I got it. So nice job.
Thank you.
Sure. Does anyone else have any questions? I don't think we'll be able to stop on this one for another example, but does anyone else have any peer feedback or questions about this exercise? It's such a critical exercise, and it takes time too. You really have to just keep spending time on it. You have to practice it too. So it's not something we're going to solve today, but I'd love to hear if anyone else has a question or comment or feedback for Gladys. Okay. Well, let's take the next step with messaging. I'm going to spend a little more time on this because it's so valuable. And I think, like the scores showed, messaging is a section that we do need help on, most of us. So I wanted to unpack it a little bit further. You have your elevator pitch, and that should be the first thing you say to almost anyone. That can be something that really helps guide your written communications, social posts, etc. But it's not always going to be a perfect match. And it's also not always going to be everything you have to say. You will often have to say more. And so you should start to think about, okay, we've got this one elevator pitch that should stay consistent, but how do we adapt this for different audiences? We're going to talk about audiences next, but as you think about different audiences that are hearing your communications, how do we start making sure that we tailor it, we adapt it just a little bit for them, right? Because a funder is different than a customer, is different than a friend. And we use a tool here to help you start thinking about, first, it's always your elevator pitch. Then you can start thinking about your three uniques. That's a tool we use in the positioning work we do. And why do those uniques matter to your audience? That's also something we do in our positioning work. So this is part of taking 2 steps back before you can do good communications. And then also, how do I give proof points? So Gladys gave an excellent elevator pitch, but if I said, well, what evidence do you have? Or how do I know that it's efficient? Or how do I know that any issue can be solved? You should have those proof points to be able to back those up. And you can even map those out. I'm giving you an example here, just like I've given other examples. We worked with a water organization. It's called Waves for Water. And we helped them map the different elements of their messaging. And this is a tool you can use as well. They had 3 different audiences. One of them was a program officer at a big NGO. If they were talking to this officer that we called her Olivia, just for the sake of having a name, if they were talking to a program officer, they would still give the main elevator pitch. And that's what you see over here on the black box. 1 in 9 people in this world don't have access to water. We're a humanitarian aid organization, et cetera, et cetera. Our goal is bam, bam, bam. So you can see those 3 parts over there on the black box. But then, because they're talking to a program officer, they're going to be speaking very different than if they were talking to a beneficiary in the community. So for Olivia, they're going to talk about how we're a go-to partner for you, and we have a 10-year track record, and our model is based on local resources. These are things that Olivia would care about that others might not care about. And then on the right, you'll see proof points. If Olivia says, hey, that all sounds great, but how do I know this is true? Waves for Water could say, well, we can be on the ground implementing within days. We have in-country teams. We've worked in these countries. We've helped this many people. You can see these proof points on the right. So this is called message mapping, and it's just a tool you can use. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but once you get a copy of this recording, you can sketch something out similar where you have your elevator pitch, and then depending on each audience, you're starting to tailor the message a little bit different based on that audience. And it sounds simple, but I think sometimes we just get in our head, this is my story, this is how I explain it, and we forget that different audiences hear things in different ways and want to hear different information. So that was messaging. Now we can move on to the third piece of your marketing strategy. We've talked about goals and messaging. Now, who are we talking to? Who are the audiences? This could be known as your target market. You've probably done some thinking around this in either the Sinapis program or other exercises, but this is a group of people at which we're aiming our communications and our marketing and our outreach. We can't target everyone. There's no way to be generic and get a larger slice of the market. I think Coca-Cola and Apple and maybe a few other brands in the world are generic enough to target everyone from a 5-year-old kid to a 80-year-old Jaja, right? I mean, most organizations just can't target everyone because their products and services are meant for a certain group of people. So this is where we're stopping to ask, who is this communications for? And remember, the communications might be different than your products and services being aimed at a certain group. I'll give you an example. If you are a water social enterprise like Waves for Water, you might be going into local communities and helping them with filtration systems, but they might not be the audience for your brand or your communications, because when you go into that community, you might be coming based on a partner that is already working there. There might be a number of reasons that you're not trying to sell to them. You might be trying to sell to funders and NGOs and government. So keep in mind that your audiences for communications might be different than your customers and beneficiaries. It might be the same. I'm going to give you an example of a few sample audiences. Just like all the exercises, I'm trying to get you thinking about what your audiences could be. So your audiences for your marketing strategy could be working mothers living in urban areas. It could be international fintech funders for early stage ventures. It could be high-level government officials and working in health in Kenya and Uganda. It could be wealthy families with teenage children who like to cook, or CEOs and COOs of major corporations based in East Africa. I hope you notice a pattern in all 5 of these. These are just made up, but the pattern is they're pretty specific. They're very specific, in fact. You're not hearing me say everyone in Kenya or all young people in Uganda. I mean, there's just no way at the size of organization most of us are to target everyone. So you want to get as specific as possible, because once you name these audiences in specific ways, you can start thinking about specific strategies, specific channels, and specific objectives for these audiences. But if you're just trying to target everyone, there's no way to figure out how to reach them. So I'll stop again and let you work on this for about 3 minutes. Who are your priority audiences, or who is your priority audience? Maybe it's just one. And this is about your marketing and communications. Let's try to be as specific as possible. It can just be 1 or 2 sentences like I showed you. It could be age and gender. It could be needs and aspirations. It could be something about their purchasing power or their problems or concerns or their interests in their lifestyle. Again, I had an example where it was about wealthy families who love to cook. I mean, you can get very specific in these examples. Or it could be about age, like working mothers. There are lots of different ways to list your audiences. But let's just spend 3 minutes and sketch those out, and then I'll ask for a volunteer to share your audiences. All right, maybe less than 3 minutes, but is anyone ready to share? Who are you targeting in your marketing communications? Don't be shy. It's free consulting.
May I try? I'm just trying to toy with what I usually think about, because uh, my target audience is, I don't know how to narrow it down, but it's for people before you get into conflict, and those are the SMEs and companies which are starting up. And during conflict, those are the people who are already in conflict or are already in court and about to get into conflict. So I don't know how the target audience would be and how I would frame them, because they are the people who, before they are about to get, before getting into conflict, so they're preparing themselves maybe in the contracts, they capture the issue of mediation and arbitration or ADR. And then during a conflict, maybe people who are already in court or already in some form of dispute and about to get into conflict, where they foresee that the way maybe the breach of contract or the way things are going, especially in succession matters, there's going to be a conflict. So I don't know how would my target audience, how would describe my priority audience to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, Gladys. I think this might even go back to the business strategy and the model, the business model, and the positioning strategy of where are the greatest opportunities in the market, which type of corporations or individuals could benefit most, who could pay the most. I think these are almost more business decisions that then should drive your marketing strategy. You could say that, look, we're going to focus on SMEs in Kenya and CEOs and COOs, or, there are lots of different ways to narrow it. But I think my perspective would be you would want to narrow it more than just anyone that's about to be in conflict. For instance, we've worked with a justice client across Uganda and Kenya, and they focused explicitly on criminal justice. So they helped people in conflict with the law make sure they have a right to a fair hearing, and they didn't deal with land disputes or work law and all the different other types of law. They really just focused on criminal law. So I think that's my one piece of feedback, is it would encourage you to think about the business model and the positioning strategy and who is it really for, and then just making sure your marketing reflects that. And sometimes you have to experiment too, right? As an early stage organization, you're putting your services out in lots of places and figuring out where does it stick, who has the purchasing power. But once you figure that out, trying to target a certain group will make your communications more successful.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, I hope everyone else took a few notes there, because very quickly, coming out of the goals, which we defined, messaging and audiences, now we're thinking about marketing communication strategies. So we know who we're targeting. We now, I think, even start to have some of the goals down, and now we're going to think about how we're going to make them stop and notice us. These strategies aren't yet talking about specific tactics. We're not yet talking about Facebook and events. We're talking about unique ideas that'll make people, make our communication stand out. So the word strategies and tactics can sometimes be confused. So let me give you a few examples of what we're doing next in our marketing plan. So some sample strategies could be, I worked last year with a Sinapis alumni, that a woman making gluten-free baked goods in Uganda. And this is just an example I came to mind where this wasn't her real marketing strategy, but what if she developed expertise around gluten-free baking? And what if she gave away free recipes to attract new customers? That could be a really great marketing strategy. Again, this isn't yet talking about events or Facebook or websites. It's just a strategy. It's an idea. It's a unique way of making people notice you. I noticed on the list, I don't remember the exact name, but there was a soap company. Maybe one of you could raise your hand. But what if you featured real families that have used your soap and talked about the health benefits and used scientific data to prove positive health outcomes? I don't know anything about your organization, but I'm just making that up. Like, what if you became a real scientific organization with your communications and you use data to show health outcomes? That's a strategy. What if you partnered with local corporations and small businesses to show that HR problems are common across all organizations? I saw that there was an HR firm that might be here today. Another idea would be a buy one, give one program. So what if every time someone bought your product, you gave something to an East African nonprofit or charity, and then you could show the impact of that purchasing. So maybe if someone bought a can of yogurt, you could donate a can of yogurt, and then you could show pictures of children, maybe at schools or babies' homes, using that product, and that could be your marketing strategy. Word of mouth, you could develop a referral program for customers and really try to use word of mouth to drive new sales or brand awareness. Again, these are just 5 random examples, but it shows you strategies are really the unique way or the how I'm going to get people to notice. And this one's hard, by the way. It's much easier to think of tactics. It's much easier to think about social media versus billboards versus market days. What's much harder is to think about, well, a lot of people are using billboards and social media and market days. So how do I get people to notice me? What is it about my communications that are important? So I see a hand up from Joshua. So go ahead, Joshua. Question on this one.
Kevin, the question I have is, in my example, we are an IT company. So we are offering a technology solution, but our target is the HR managers in the different organizations. So should our correct strategy be to target the end user, even though the product is a technical one? Because you'll find that the user might not really be interested in the technology. They just want the solution. So should we even be considering ourselves to be a HR company or a technology company? Because we have a technological solution, but it's targeting to be used by HR.
Yeah, great question. I wish I had enough information on you to give advice. I would hate to give you the wrong advice because I don't know much, but I think you're thinking about it the right way. You're thinking about your target audience the right way. Is it really the companies or the user? You're thinking about strategies the right way. I wish I had a clearer answer for you, but just I would hate to give you the wrong advice since I don't know enough about your organization, but you're asking the right questions. These are all the things you've got to figure out in your marketing strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So let's spend a few minutes workshopping this again. I think in the interest of time, just 2 or 3 minutes, just starting to think about your strategies. You probably won't come up with it perfectly today, but I think what you could do is start making some notes, either on a sheet of paper or your computer. Just what type of interesting strategy could I use to make people notice? We're going to get into the tactics in a minute, but why should people care? There's a lot of noise out there. So what is it that's unique about your marketing message or that your marketing program? What makes it stand out from everyone else? So I would say, just like goals, you really, for now, listing one main strategy is enough. It's hard to support many strategies. So one main strategy, and then if you have more than one, you can write them down, but don't try to accomplish more than one until you've seen if the first one should work. So let's break for take 2 minutes to work on this, and then I'd love to get someone to share your ideas. Okay, does anyone want to share a strategy that you came up with? Or maybe it's one you're using today. This doesn't have to be new. It could be something you're attempting already. Don't be shy.
I'm just holding myself to, it seems I'm dominating, but can I go ahead?
Sure. If nobody else wants to go, sure. Yeah, it's great to have an example, so feel free.
Okay. I think for me, I would develop expertise and hold short videos, maybe on frequently asked questions about ADR.
Yeah, I like that. I think what I would, the only advice I would give, I like that a lot. I think for your business, that's a great idea. Expertise can be a great way to stand out from the crowd. Think about all the organizations out there that are just selling, and pushing a message out. But if you're providing someone information, something that makes their lives better, that's a great way to stand out from the crowd. Gladys, your example makes me think of an organization many of you might know in Uganda called Barefoot Law. Started, they're colleagues of ours, and they started, I guess, 8 or 9 years ago with Gerald just posting on Facebook legal information. Just here are different tips about, if you have someone trying to steal your land, or an inheritance. I mean, just legal information posted for free on Facebook, and they now have 185,000 people following them, and every day they're just posting information, and they've become experts in the legal field. And so Barefoot Law has used expertise to stand out from the crowd. And, if you needed legal help and you'd seen all those messages and you got help from Barefoot Law, you might go to them first, as opposed to just some lawyer that's trying to sell you something all the time. So I love that idea, Gladys. I think the only tweak I would provide is, instead of starting to think about videos yet, let's put that part down. You might decide that it's videos. You might decide that it's a blog. You might decide that it's Twitter. You might decide that it's open events. There are a number of tactics and channels you could use to get your strategy across. But the strategy is providing ADR advice and becoming an expert in the field and giving that away. So thank you for that. I hope that makes sense. Strategies are hard. I mean, it's a hard one to come up with, because it makes you stop and think, oh yeah, before I just start communicating things, I need to have a reason behind the communications, and I need to have a unique twist or a unique idea. So this one's hard. Happy to come back to it during the Q&A. We're gonna have plenty of time for Q&A. So once you all see how it all comes together, we can continue talking about it. All right, so we've made it through 4 of the 10 pieces. We've made it through goals and messages, audiences, and strategies. Now we're going to hit the 5th and 6th piece, which is your channels. And this was one of the key topics. Remember at the beginning, we scored pretty low here. So this is one of the key topics we want to stop and think about for a moment, is marketing channels. You might have heard that term. It might seem like a buzzword, but it's a critical piece of your marketing and communications, because even if you have the goal, and even if you have the right audience, you might have the great message and you might have the great strategy. The next step is, just like I said to Gladys, what is the channel you use? Maybe it is YouTube, maybe it's an event, maybe it's billboards. There's so many marketing channels that this is how you're going to get your brand's message out to the world. You have many routes, right? I mean, digital marketing in the last 10 to 20 years has given us even more routes to get your message out there. In the old days, it was either newspapers or maybe market days or radio, but now we have so many ways to reach people. Here's a graphic, and you can Google this. It's just a concept called paid, owned, and earned. And I want you to keep those 3 terms in mind, because it really summarizes the 3 different types of channels. Sometimes it feels overwhelming with all the different tools you can use, but if you think about them in those 3 buckets, it can just help you make sense of it all. So you have paid media or paid channels, you have owned media or owned channels, and you have earned. The difference is, paid, just like it says, is a marketing channel that you pay for. So you buy the eyeballs essentially. This is things like display ads on the internet, social media ads, billboards on the side of the road, newspaper ads, anything you have to pay for. Like it says here, it works really well when you're just getting started and nobody knows about you. However, it's expensive, right? Many of us just don't have marketing budgets, and it's sometimes easy to get dependent. You pay money, you get customers, you think that that's your only source, and maybe it makes you lazy in other areas. So paid can be a good tool, but it's often not realistic. Owned media, on your other hand, that's a whole category of channels like your website, your own content like your blog, social media, Facebook and Twitter. Even though you don't really own those people, it's your channel. Email marketing, it's such a valuable tool. WhatsApp groups, word of mouth. There's so many different channels that are owned by you. And these are really great because you're able to pull in traffic or customers organically. And it's normally a lot cheaper, right? These are assets and channels you own. So you have complete control, it costs less, but you have a limited audience, right? Many of us just don't own a lot of names in our database, or we don't have a lot of people on our Twitter accounts. So it takes a lot of time, and it normally takes a lot of time to grow large. And then finally, there's earned media, earned channels. These are the tools and the channels that people are almost giving to you. So this is like the word of mouth publicity. You hear a lot about PR. If you get an article in the local newspaper, that's like gold, right? And that's earned. You didn't pay for it. It's not something you owned, but you earned that mention. Review websites. If people are going online and saying, wow, I just bought this, this yogurt and it was incredible. That's a piece of earned media. So it's really great for return on investment because people trust each other. And if someone says something about it, they're going to trust it. It increases your credibility, it expands your reach, but it's hard. It's hard to collect and cultivate. It's not something you can just snap your fingers. Everyone wants to be mentioned in the local paper, but it's hard to do so. So think about those three types: paid, owned, and earned. And that helps you start to think about your channels. And you might decide that for me, events is my channel. That's a type of earned and owned media. You could say that traditional marketing like radio or TV or newspaper, that's my channel. That's paid media. There are all sorts of different channels you could pick. And how do you choose? You really just have to make data-driven decisions. You have to look at your competitors. So what are competitors doing? Maybe if they're doing one channel, it's something you should do as well. Maybe if 10 of them are doing that channel, you should stay away from it because there's too much noise. You should look at your own historical data, like where do customers come from? How can I cultivate more of them? If you start to see that, wow, every time I go to an event, I see a 10% increase, then do more events. Yeah, and then just set goals and measure your progress over time. It takes experimentation. It's hard to choose channels, but what we do say is it's a rule of two. For most organizations, unless you're Coca-Cola or Apple, just pick two channels. Pick a primary channel, and that's your main channel that you rely on. And then pick a secondary channel that augments or that supports the primary. You can't do it all. There's just no way. Sometimes we even say Facebook or Twitter. You don't have to do all social media. Sometimes you want to, but pick one main channel and then one to back it up, and then watch the data accordingly. So this one should be a little easier for you to think about. I'd love to spend a few minutes thinking about it, and then if anyone wants to share, but what is your primary channel and what is your secondary channel? If you're choosing a paid channel, let's make sure you have the budget to match it, because you can't just say, I want to be on TV unless you have the budget to match it, because obviously TV costs money. Yeah, where could you find your audience and which one allows you to reach your objectives? Instead of stopping too long on this one, does anyone just want to share a channel that you're already using, or maybe one you want to experiment with, or question about how to pick these different channels? I'll go back one screen and see if it helps to see this grid again. Hopefully it'll generate some ideas around the different ways to reach customers or funders, whoever your audience is. Does anyone feel overwhelmed looking at this list? Does it just feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have a marketing background. I don't have a marketing team. How am I ever supposed to choose? How am I ever supposed to manage it? I know it does me. Even for Mighty Ally, we don't personally, or even for our business, we don't use a lot of different channels. We have two main channels that we use. We publish on our blog. If you go to mightyally.org, you'll see an insights section, and it's deep with free advice. It's a lot of blog content around marketing and brand and communications. That's our main channel. And we every single month publish a big piece there. And then we use email marketing to back up that channel. So our main channel is blogging and our backup channel is email marketing. And we've grown to a list of over 1,000 people that every month have a really good click rate. And that list continues to grow, and people sign up for it, and we ask people if they'd like to join it. And that becomes our backup channel to make sure we're driving people to the blog. So it shows how simple it can be, and that's become a really great driver for us. All right, if there aren't any questions or comments, I'll get to the final piece, and then we will start to think about a Q&A and peer advice. All right, actually 2 more pieces I lied. All right, so we've got our strategies and channels. Looks like there might be a chat here. Oh, thank you for sharing that link, Joseph. All right, so one of the final pieces is now objectives. If you think about that 10-part marketing plan and you're going to get a copy of that, we're going to come up with all the great ideas and we're going to be excited about where this all could go. But now we need to track our performance. We need to figure out which KPIs or metrics you should use to measure your success. We want to look at our objectives and select 3 or so to track our performance. Sometimes these concepts get confused, goals versus objectives. Remember, goals were just big picture. So increase sales, attract new government partners. Those are big picture. What we're trying to do now is actually start to measure how is our marketing and communications plan performing. So a couple of examples, we use the term KPI. You might have used that before. It's called a key performance indicator. It's a little bit of a business buzzword, so you can just call it metrics, you could call it objectives, whatever you want to call it. What we're talking about is truly measuring our success of marketing and communications. So your marketing goal could be, or you're really, this would be an objective, in fact, is like if the goal was around, we want to use email marketing or if we want to reach new eyeballs, the objective would be gain 5,000 new subscribers by this date. You could look at subscribers, you could look at your click to open rates on your newsletters, you could set targets like 5,000 subscribers, 4,000 people clicking. If you did, like Gladys said, possibly launch a YouTube channel, your goal could be just increasing the viewers, but then your metrics could be number of viewers. It could be the minutes viewed. You're really trying to get down and set a few measures to know if you're on track or not, because if you're just spending all this time and money on marketing and not measuring whether it works, it's going to be really hard to manage and to figure out whether or not you should keep doing it. So let's stop for a minute and set 1 to 3 metrics per channel. So if you have a primary channel and a secondary channel, let's set 1 to 3 metrics. I think everyone has probably heard about SMART goals or SMART KPIs, but I'll repeat just in case you haven't. These should be specific, meaning that anyone should be able to read it and know what it means. They should be measurable, meaning they have to have a number attached. It can't just be, build brand awareness. That's not measurable. It should be attainable, meaning you can be aspirational and you can put a big goal out there or metric out there, but it should be within reach. Relevant, meaning it should relate to the rest of your plan, and time-based, meaning it should have a date attached to it. Just like this example here, gain 5,000 new subscribers from the website by the December of this year. That's a really good SMART KPI. I'll stop for a minute and see if anyone wants to share. Go ahead and sketch these out and make sure they tie back to your channels, right? So for Mighty Ally, our main channel is our blog. So our main metric there is viewership of the blog. It's how many page views. And we also look at how long people stayed, because if 1 million people hit the blog and then they only stayed for 10 seconds, then it almost is pointless. So we look at the number of people that hit the blog and the length of time on the blog. For email, we look at the list size of our email list and the number of clicks that we get. So those are the 2 metrics, the 2 KPIs, the 2 objectives for our 2 marketing channels. All right. I hope you're sketching and typing. I can't see you, so I hope this has been helpful so far. And so would love to see if anyone has an example. Again, this could be a current KPI or objective, or this could be something you want to start measuring in the future. All right, Gladys, how about I'll pick on you since you've volunteered before. Let's say your strategy is to become an expert in ADR and release advice. Curious to know which channels you picked and then which objectives you're thinking about.
I was thinking of a blog because I already have a blog. The YouTube channel was very good, but I don't know how that can be achieved, but I was concentrating more on the blog.
Yeah.
Yeah, where I can give, there's also blogs, there's blogs and vlogs. So the vlogs is where I would give the FAQs, and then the blogs is where I would write down, give information on ADR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the number of clicks are the ones that would be by measure, and the duration.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then maybe too, how many, and then hopefully you'll be able to count how many new customers or inquiries you get. Most blogs should have some sort of what we call to action. And so it's a big block of text or a button or an image that says, contact us now if you need help. And hopefully you're able to measure that as well.
I've been doing that on Facebook.
Great.
And requesting if anybody has a question or a concern, they should book an appointment or contact us. But that hasn't brought any response. I haven't got any response in respect of that.
Sure.
So maybe
Sure.
that's why I was thinking of changing from Facebook to blog.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. But is Facebook the right audience? Are people going on Facebook for that type of advice, or is a blog more trustworthy? There's also something to be said that we haven't talked about yet in this workshop about sometimes channels are there to nurture your potential clients or customers. You know, they aid in their knowledge. It gets them, the customers or potential clients excited, but sometimes it doesn't drive the business. So for instance, with Mighty Ally, I think we've had maybe a few people reach out via the website that we never had heard of before and said, we'd like to hire you. But most of the time our work happens through relationships and our clients come through relationships, but the blog and the newsletter, it nurtures them over time. So that's an important thing for many of your businesses. Some of you need to just sell right away, but some of you have more of a long sales cycle where your marketing and communications is more about just building credibility and nurturing those potential clients down the road. And they might pick up the phone and call you one day. They might not ever use your marketing channel to reach out. And that's okay, as long as the marketing channel aided in that sale or that funder in the future. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. We have one final piece: deliverables, budget, and to-dos. This is actually the 3 final pieces. So we've made it through 7 sections of the 10 steps of your marketing plan. The bottom of your template will have these 3 different sections. It'll say deliverables, budget, and to-dos. So the final step in completing your strategy is making sure it's actionable. You know, we could spend hours on this call and on this workshop coming up with great ideas. We could have great strategies, and sometimes organizations do that. They put together a great plan and you read it and it looks exciting and you read it and then nothing else happens, right? So what we're hoping that we're doing is making sure that these ideas are realistic, given our constrained resources. Most of us don't have unlimited time, team, tools, or treasure. And those are often the greatest limitations to doing great marketing. So we need to figure out now, okay, we've got these great ideas. How are we going to put it into place and make sure it's actionable? So this one is probably too big to try to share out today, but I just wanted to speak to it so that when you get the template, you can start filling this out. So for each channel and objective, you should list the deliverables that are needed. And when I say deliverables, I mean things like one-pagers that are printed, or videos, or social media posts, or email marketing campaigns, photography. There are a ton of different deliverables that takes to make good marketing and communications. So for Gladys, she'll need blogs, she'll need social posts. I mean, there's a lot of different things you'll need. So you'll need to list those out. And that's again, a critical step to make sure that we bridge the strategy to the action, and we're not just generating ideas, we're actually bringing it down to earth. So after we list all the deliverables, we want to list a budget. This all takes time and money. So maybe it's going to be mostly earned media, and maybe it doesn't cost a lot of paid media, but it will cost someone's time, and time is money, right? So if you hire a person and you think, oh, they're going to do marketing on the side, they're going to be they're the receptionist at the front, plus they're going to do some marketing for us, or, well, they're a junior sales colleague, but they're also going to handle our marketing communications. You need to budget for that time, because good marketing takes time. And then finally, let's list exactly who needs to do these deliverables and by when. So to-dos and timing. It's not good enough to say that we need a poster, and it's not good enough to say it costs 100,000 shillings. We also need to say, this is when it needs to happen by this person within the organization. And these final steps, again, just make sure that we're bridging the strategy into the action. And that's where it goes from marketing strategy into marketing planning and implementation. Remember at the beginning, I showed you there's business strategy, marketing strategy, and implementation. This piece helps bridge the gap. And then you start just doing the work. You get the plan finished and you start doing the work. So that was a whirlwind tour of the marketing plan, but now you're going to get a copy of this and you get to fill this in. Something I have not talked about yet is the fact that we often break these marketing plans into monthly sections. It helps us maybe compartmentalize the year. I know we're already in April, so you could start now. Some of you might have a different fiscal year. Your new year might start in May or June. But we like breaking that into months, or you could do it in quarters. You could just combine January, February, March and call it Q1. But we like setting, sometimes your goals will last all year. Sometimes your messages last all year, and your audiences probably last a long time. But for instance, you could say that in Q1, our strategy is X, Y, and Z. And then in Q2, we're going to shift our strategy a little bit. Or you could say that, we're going to use these sets of primary channels for a few months, and then we're going to shift and try something else. You don't want to be changing your marketing every single month, because you want some level of consistency and you want some level of being able to measure it over time. But we do like the idea of setting maybe some different strategies and different objectives and messages over the course of the year, especially around messages, because if you're just going out and using the same channels and the same strategies and the same messages hitting the same people, they're going to start tuning you out. So think about over the course of the year, maybe you start doing some holiday campaigns, maybe in certain times of year, you're starting to do like back to school, or who knows what it is, Mother's Day, Father's Day. There's so many different monthly events and things that you can tie your messaging to. So we have a lot of clients that like to say, oh yeah, there's a big event happening at the UN this month in July. Let's do this strategy and this message then. Hey, around Christmas time, our beneficiaries are looking for X, Y, and Z. Let's do a Christmas campaign in December. You get the idea. So you'll have a copy of this. Feel free to just fill it out for the whole year. Like, just make it a big blank and just say, this is my goal for the whole year. This is my message for the whole year. But then as you get better at it, start filling it out maybe by month or quarter. All right. I get to stop talking a little bit. We've got at least 23 minutes. And then, like I said, I'm happy to stay on for 10 or 15 extra minutes since we lost a little bit of time. And yeah, I would love to just get a Q&A, a question and answer going. I know many of you have been quiet so far. I hope it's because you've been thinking, but I do want to make this as interactive as possible. Your peers here in the Alumni Network are such a valuable chance to learn and build on each other's expertise. I can only talk so much, so I would just ask the questions. Yeah, what sparks of inspiration or ideas have come to you today? What are you excited about? What are you eager to dig into? Where are you still struggling? Please raise your hand. This stuff is hard. So raise your hand and say, Kevin, I don't get it. Or hey team, hey alumni group, I need some help here. And how can your peers in the group help, whether it's today or tomorrow? And I would say, yeah, feel free also, Sinapis team, if you know of examples or colleagues that might need some help. Yeah, Vivienne, I don't know if that was how to pronounce your name perfectly, but please chime in.
Yes, thank you very much. Mine is more of a concern because I'm really new to the business atmosphere and I'm really new to the marketing. So sometimes people will advise you to go into the media fora of Instagram. I don't know. I'm not even on Facebook. And I would many times prefer to have the one-on-one references. If someone uses my soap, I'd like them to recommend to someone else and build my brand slowly. So how do I move from where I am afraid to venture into media and come to ways where I can even start like a website? I have liked the discussions moving towards blogs and emails. Yeah, because sometimes I feel like even Instagram products are not as good when it finally comes to your doorstep. Yeah, so I really
Yeah.
struggle in that department of marketing. I've liked
Yeah.
the discussion of how to grow the marketing. It doesn't have to start from one pitch and it's working, how you gradually grow. So I've really liked that concept. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks for the question. That's a great question. Something that's worth mentioning is you touched on the fact that sometimes people will give you advice for this or that, and I think that's the problem with marketing and communications. It's such a broad field that maybe one person that you meet, or maybe an agency or a firm that comes to pitch you, they might be into PR and publicity, and so they're going to try to get you in the news and on media, on TV and in articles. Another person might be a social media influencer, and they say that, hey, for this amount of money I can get you all over Instagram. And I mean, there's so many different things out there. So I would encourage you to think wisely and try to work with people that are maybe more solution agnostic or platform agnostic, because it might not even be media to the world. In your case, with your soap, one idea that came to mind, this is just random idea, but you mentioned growing it word of mouth. I don't know if you're already doing this, but what if you included a little card or a little coupon for a discount in each bar of soap with a handwritten note saying, pass this on to a friend and they will get one free and you'll get one free, or pass this on to a friend for a 10% discount on your next order. I mean, there are ways to cultivate your network of buyers and customers without having to go try to reach new ones. So that's just one random idea that came to mind, is trying to build it through word of mouth and friendships and relationships instead of just mass media or mass communications. Have you tried anything like that to date, or is that maybe a new idea to try to do marketing, but to start with your existing customers?
Yeah, I think I like the coupon and the card idea. I'm even just developing my packaging.
Yeah.
Yes, but yes, I really try to encourage people when they buy. I give them maybe one extra discount and things like that. I want to venture into giving to charity a
Yeah.
percentage of my income from this business. That comes to mind a lot. So yeah, I think I would try these coupons and cards within the soap package. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to use creative strategies without having to pay a lot of money. Like, I don't know what it's called. You can correct me, but I know with soap making, sometimes you end up with ends of soap or extras or leftovers. And, what if you, with everyone who bought a bar of soap, you also included that leftover, and you asked them, you said, this one's for someone in need, and you keep this one, but please give this one to someone in your community that needs it. And that type of thing, if you included a little card and gave a little extra and asked them to take care of someone, I mean, or, please give someone to need and share back the story. And then you use that story to tell others about your soap. I mean, these are little ideas that you don't have to spend much money, but these are even using some leftovers to start to cultivate that network and that relationship.
Yes, I have noted that down. Thank you.
Good. Sure. Got a question. Will you be sharing a sample messaging platform tool? Not as part of this workshop, since this one was more high level. I can go back to that piece and show you, and happy to answer any questions here. It's also because messaging platforms are often just very different depending on the type of organization, but at least here's the overview solely. A messaging platform, it can be as simple as just a Word document, and it can just be a few lines. It can be a big PowerPoint deck that has hundreds of pages if you're a big corporation, but most messaging platforms should at least just get on a page, things like your mission and your vision and your value propositions. It's almost like if you took the business model canvas and all the strategy work you did, and you typed it out and how you wanted people to hear it or how you wanted your team to say it, and then you just shared it with everyone and you said, hey, here's how we need to be speaking. And here's the tone of voice. Here are the words we use. You can make a list of the words you don't use. And it doesn't have to be anything more than that, just a document that contains how you speak and what to say and what not to say, just to get everyone on the same page.
May I ask a question?
Please.
What do you think about profiles? And maybe putting the profile in a brochure and you hand them out. What do you, the old way of doing stuff? Could we still, what do you think about it, and is it effective?
Profiles like a company profile?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends on your audience. I don't mean to give a non-answer, but I think the answer is it depends. If you're approaching maybe investors, then certainly a company profile could be very applicable. If you're approaching maybe a partner to, in your case, Gladys, I can't think, maybe it's a big corporate partner, then maybe a PowerPoint deck that you present to them is better. I think it just all depends on your audience and what they're used to, what they want. If you're trying to reach customers, a profile might not matter as much as them reading your blog and reaching out and having a phone call with you. So I don't think there's any one specific deliverable or channel that can always be applicable. It just always depends on your audience.
Thank you.
Sure. Like for instance, Mighty Ally, we don't have a company profile. We don't have a one-pager. We have a PowerPoint deck that we sometimes send, but actually most of our work comes through conversations. And so, I mean, it just for us, we had these decks and these big flashy presentations at the beginning. And then we realized for us, that just didn't really matter. It was more about the conversation. And we publish on our blog and we send emails, people reach out over email, and then we call them, we set up Zoom meetings. It just, every organization is going to find the channels and the deliverables that work. And I think that's one of the main themes of today is don't try to do it all. You just simply can't do it all. So pick the channels and the deliverables that work for you and then put the rest down. Where else are we struggling? Feel free, no shame. This is new stuff. And this is just like, even though marketing is what I've spent my whole career doing, if you put me in a hospital and asked me to do surgery on someone, I would be lost. So there's no shame at all in having some questions or areas of concern.
Hi, Kevin. May I ask a question? This is Joshua.
Hi, Joshua. Yes, please.
So as I'd mentioned before, we are an IT company. So specifically, we do offer HR system solutions. So our users are corporates. So even if I look like in the last 3 years, pretty much all the clients that we have worked with or new clients that we've got have just basically come either from referrals or when we respond to a request for proposals that has been sent out. So sometimes when I even try to think of a marketing strategy, then you start thinking, well, first of all, the people you want to know this are the HR managers, and then you do not even have their contacts in the first place. Then secondly, even if they get the message, they may not be the final decision maker because then they have to go back to the management, then there's a discussion about the budget. And so sometimes to be honest, I really am stuck. I do not have any marketing strategy so far because I do not know. There isn't like one place where you can say, if I put this message out here, then all these all these balls will come in, because there is the user, there is a decision maker, there's one who will finance it, and they may be all over the place. So for me, it's just been a struggle. I think we've just been getting by, and pretty much what we deliberately decided to do is, because we've observed that a lot of our clients are coming through referrals, we basically just grew. I think we've come to the conclusion that our sales cycle is a very long one. So we just nurture the clients that we have. A lot of times we upsell to them, so we're able to expand the portfolio of products that we've given them. But in terms of reaching out to new ones, that area we are really, really struggling. We really don't know what to do.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few key challenges. Thank you for sharing. So before I give advice or even just thoughts, does anyone else want to chime in? This should be more peer learning, even the Sinapis team. Does anyone else have ideas on Joshua's challenge before I keep talking more? I'd love to hear from others on how you might be able to contribute to his challenge. All right. If no other
Yes,
ideas.
hello. Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead, Ava. Please.
Yeah, just to share insights regarding Joshua's scenario. I've seen some of the IT companies here in Uganda. One of the key clientele I would think of for him to be able to scale up would be corporate companies. You know, one of the challenges with our small companies or small SMEs is that we do not have or we cannot afford IT companies to give us the services we want. So one of the areas you would think of, especially to do with your marketing strategy, one of the things I've thought of is direct marketing. One of the things you need to do is to identify those companies within your country. I think you're in Kenya, within your country or within your area that you think you'll be able to serve. Then, but sometimes those companies have their information maybe on their website and everything. So identify those companies that you think you can support, because most of us are small companies. We've outsourced IT. We just can't afford to have an in-house IT person. So you have a very big market base. But what you can start with is to target those small, the SMEs. Then after you've identified those companies, then you go do direct marketing, like approach them, if possible, do a simple presentation to their respective directors or CEO, show them the way we did the elevator pitch, show them where the problem is and you have a solution. I believe from the many you visit, you're likely to get clientele. But I see your area of expertise is good, much needed in our SMEs, because most of us cannot afford to have an in-house person. So identify those key companies that you believe you can work with. Go do direct marketing. You can come up with a profile or that information that you believe can help you pitch, and then start from there. I think that's what I have to say.
May I add on?
Please, yeah, thank you.
Has said, for Joshua, just a rider to what Ava has said, and which I've seen that is happening in Kenya quite a bit, is holding a webinar. A webinar may be specifically for maybe the SMEs, as Eva has indicated that those the SMEs maybe cannot afford to have an in-house IT person. Is it possible to maybe find out what their needs are or what gaps they are experiencing or problems that they're experiencing in respect of their whatever they need in their companies, then hold a webinar and advertise it to the SMEs and maybe to the rest of the world. Just advertise it and then hold that webinar where you answer the questions that they may have, like, or concerns. Yeah, and through that, and then after the put your address and your telephone number, and if anybody wants to reach out to you, maybe your email address, and then from there you can convert them into clients. I think our webinar will be very effective for you because then you put yourself out there and you distinguish yourself from other IT companies, because now people will be able to identify you, your company with you and the benefits, and then you can put that what we've learned just now, the elevator pitch. So everybody knows who you are, what you do, and what your vision and mission is. And since they'll be able to identify with you because you have answered many of their problems.
Yeah, I like that idea, Gladys. I was actually thinking similarly, Joshua, maybe when COVID is over, even like an event, you could get all the, IT professionals and host an event where you're just giving away knowledge or bringing in experts, or, they're just different ideas to Ava's point. You might have to just reach out direct and be more direct marketing, where there's one tactic I've heard that works pretty well. You could just reach out either on the phone or by email, look up the website of the company and just say, hey, who in your company is in charge of IT decisions? And normally that person will pass on the right information, and it might just have to be that kind of direct marketing for a while. But you could also think about other strategies, marketing strategies, such as maybe you offer a 1 hour free consultation to anyone who wants it. And maybe you can start to promote that, and word gets out that, oh, wow, did you hear about this IT company is giving a 1 hour free consultation to anyone? And you could put it on your website. And I know time is money, and so you can't do that forever, but until you get the ball rolling and until you get the business just really picking up steam, maybe that type of 1 hour consultation or webinar or event, those are all ideas that could also work, like Ava said, with the direct marketing.
Okay, thank you for the ideas.
But you just have to try. And unfortunately, a lot of marketing and communications is just trying. There was an old joke or saying in the advertising industry, I think maybe 50 or so years ago, and the joke was that half of all advertising works. The problem is knowing which half it is. And that's the truth, right? I mean, advertising agencies wouldn't exist if it weren't for the hard side of this, which is trying new things and figuring out which one works. And so even if you think you have the greatest idea, it might fail. And maybe you think going to conferences and events will be your main channel, and maybe it just doesn't lead to business and you have to try something else. But I think that's the point, is just if you have a plan on paper like this, you can try things more deliberately and then measure things. And then if it doesn't work, move on. Who else? We've still got a little bit of time, and I understand if people need to drop off in 3 minutes at the hour, that's fine, but I think I can stay until 15 minutes after the hour. So we've got about 18 minutes. So feel free to keep chiming in. This is your space.
I can ask a question. Like in my field, in the strategic conflict management, we deal with ADR, that's ADR and training. And Apart from that, there's Gladys Wamaida. Okay, there's Gladys Wamaida and there's the company itself. And there has to be a synergy between Gladys Wamaida and the strategic conflict management. Is it important to also concentrate on my own brand?
Yeah, really great question. I think that's something that I hear more and more in the last 5 or so years. I think because a lot of people now don't necessarily have maybe the one job forever and they work in the same corporation and for 10, 15, 20 years. They might be trying different things, or they might be 80% of their time here and still spending time there, or 50% at a company, 50% as a freelancer, or maybe it's a new organization and you still want to build your brand in case the organization doesn't work out. And so I think it is becoming a lot more common for people to think about their personal brand and their personal communications, just like a company. I would say, unless you're a real, like a thought leader with a podcast with, thousands of followers and invited to speak at conferences every week, and unless you're really, that's becoming part of your job, I wouldn't worry about your own communications plan for yourself. But I think what's certainly reasonable is at least launching your own personal website, or maybe using Twitter personally to build your personal account. So I think that's certainly a good idea. There is a service called About Me. I think it's about.me. If you just type in about.me, it's a way you can create a one-page personal profile. There are other services like that that allow you to create the personal brand and then keep up with your organizational communications as well. But I think it's hard if you try to do a personal communications plan and an organizational communications plan. That becomes pretty overwhelming.
So what you're saying is that the company should have its own identity as opposed to the founder. It should have its own identity and run on its own, and not the founder to be associated with the company. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, if the company is growing and you want it to be known, that the company also needs its own identity. So for instance, like LinkedIn is a very popular tool, especially in the West, obviously where I'm from. I think across sub-Saharan Africa, it's becoming more and more popular as a way to not only have your personal profile on LinkedIn, and that would be the Gladys profile, but then companies can also have a profile on LinkedIn. And so, similarly, you might have your own Facebook page, but then your company has its Facebook page. You might decide that, hey, Twitter is not for the company, it's not going to work, but for me personally, I'm going to use Twitter to build my personal brand. So you can think of these channels for yourself just the same way as the company, but I would definitely recommend having the company with its own presence, because some people will know you and some people will know that you're the founder and that you're involved, but some people might not ever know about you until they see the company, and then they learn that you're a part, or that you're the founder.
Just something small to add on to that. Usually we start our companies as maybe individuals. So it will be good, especially at the start, to ensure that your personal brand, like what you want the world to see, is not so different from what your company brand is. You realize that sometimes when you start these SMEs, maybe your personal core values are sometimes emulated in the company you started. So when those two are aligned, it becomes easier to manage, because with SMEs sometimes, maybe for example, someone who has a soap company, I might easily identify with the person who has started it as opposed to the company. So if those two are misaligned, especially most of us, our personal, let me say, social media brands do not emulate what we actually speak out. Like for example, we opened them up when we were still maybe younger. So the photos that are there do not reflect what we are now after our growth. So it's good to have for example, your social media pages, your personal ones, emulating what you really stand out for now. In most cases, you find that, for example, your core values as an individual are almost the same as those of the company. So it's good to have those two aligned so that the two are professional and they emulate that you want to speak out. Because you find that maybe you already had a Facebook account and now you've created a company. And somehow when you merge the Facebook account and maybe your personal account, the Facebook account of the company and that of your personal account, the two somehow will merge. So if your personal brand doesn't emulate what you are now, it might actually kill your company brand. So it's good to have those two like on the same page, what you want to emulate as a person, someone who has grown, someone who has changed. Let your personal brand speak out as the CEO of your company so that the two are not misaligned. I don't know whether you get the idea.
That's a great point, especially because many of us might have hundreds of people following us on Twitter or Facebook, or maybe thousands. And then you have this company over here where you have 12 or 20 or 30. You could be using some of the personal networks to build your company by, like Ava said, making sure that it's aligned. And you might make the decision that, hey, for me, social media is just personal, but if you want it to help build your brand, you could be talking about, like for you, Gladys, on your personal profiles, talking about ADR and talking about resolution and these concepts of everyone being, things being resolved. And then that could be driving traffic over to your company profile as well. To Ava's point though, as long as they're aligned, and if they're not aligned, then just keep them separate. Because if you're over here on your personal profile and you have a baking business, you're selling cakes, and then over here you have an ADR business, you don't want them to be connected because they're not aligned.
My other question would be, I have 3 products in my service. There's the mediation, there's the arbitration, there's the litigation, legal and training. So there are 4. And they are all under strategic conflict management. So how do I market? Because each product, each service is distinct from each other, though they complement one another. They are each distinct and they are meant to generate income in their own, service. So how do I market? Do I market them on their own, each product on its own, or is it as a whole, as the whole company, strategic conflict management?
Yeah, I would think about mostly marketing the company and explaining, hey, here at Strategic Conflict Management, we do 4 things, bam, 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 and explaining those 4 things. You can also, though, take pieces of your model or pieces of your company and pull those out for maybe in that marketing plan. You could say, in January, I really want to focus on this type of service within my company, litigation, or I forget what you called it. In February, I'm really going to highlight this other piece. In March, and then I'm going to repeat the cycle so that I'm giving advice or I'm giving tools around this one piece of my business, and then I'm shifting so that you're always highlighting different pieces of your business. I think that's okay. That's what a lot of organizations do. You might have hand soap that's liquid soap. You might have bar soap. You might have shampoo, but you're still one company, and maybe one month you're talking more about your bar soap, and then the next month you're shifting to talk about your liquid soap, but you're still one company. And I think it shows that the company has different products and services. So I know we're going into our extra time. It seems like most people have stuck around, so feel free. We've got a few more minutes, and then after the call, the Sinapis team will be sending a follow-up, I believe, and that'll be the recording and the template, the tool that I sent. So the only thing remaining for today is a few more minutes for questions if you have them. All right, Sinapis team, I guess I see Beatrice and Nathan was here. Anything else from you?
Hi, Kevin. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are other questions coming in, but probably as people think through, I'm just going to share a few things via chat. So we intend to have more opportunities like this for our alumni, and do not miss out on any. Just follow us on any of our social media websites. The links are in the chat. Just follow us and just keep in touch with us in regards to the upcoming opportunities. So the links are there. Kindly join the groups, join the platforms. We are very intentional about creating more opportunities and engaging our alumni. So kindly watch out. I don't know if Beatrice has anything to add.
Thank you so much, Kevin. That was a wonderful session. Sorry, it's raining heavily right here at the office, so I can hardly hear what's being said, but that was a great session that we had already gotten some feedback. People have walked away with some serious learnings that they are going to implement in their businesses. And like Nathan has said, we have a community that is growing. So we'd like you to join our alumni groups. We have Facebook and LinkedIn. So feel free to join us. And then the Sinapis alumni digital directory. Please feel free to send us your profiles, because this is a great way to do business, as in networking and just connecting to one another at a business level, at personal level. This is a great forum that we'd like you to be part of. But otherwise, it was nice having all of you on board. And I'm sure you are walking away from this workshop with some serious learnings that you're going to implement on your businesses. Thank you so much. Sorry, Julie and Joseph are not here to actually share their thoughts, but they are very grateful that this first workshop happened in spite of all the challenges we had experienced earlier. And our sincere apologies for starting late. And thank you, Kevin, for being very, very gracious to us, and even the team for being patient with us. We are grateful. So yes, Anthony has already said he'd like a handout of what has been taught today. I believe Kevin will share with us, and then we will also send them to you via email, plus today's recordings. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Beatrice. And the final word from me is just don't let the momentum die down. If you've started to put some thoughts into place, remember that this stuff is important. It leads to business success just as much as your products and programs. And so carry on the progress, finish out the plan, and then just revisit your objectives every week or so and update your plan. It can feel overwhelming, but there's an old saying about how would you ever eat an elephant? It's so big. And the saying is, it's just one bite at a time. That's it. Just one bite at a time. Take the next logical step. You don't have to figure it all out today. Just do the next thing, which is finish the plan, and then do the next thing, which is try one channel, and then do the next thing, which is measure the channel, just one step at a time. And I think you'll find some marketing success in your endeavors. So good luck.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Shall eat those elephants.
Thank you very much.
At a time. Yeah. And if there are no further questions, I beg that we stop here. We are already beyond the time we had promised to stop. So apologies for that. I'm just wondering, in case someone wants to get in touch with you, Kevin, could you share your email with them? I don't know if it's something that you would consider. If someone wants to ask a question directly,
Yep. And then I'll also include Evan's email. She's the co-founder of our training side, Mighty Ally Institute. So I'll put them into the chat. And yeah, thank you all for the time today. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. I hope we have all benefited. Looking forward to feedback from you. But from the Sinapis team, have a good evening.
Bye-bye.